Do you think that too many fights in Escape from Tarkov end in one-taps? Do you think that variable optics like the EOTech Voodoo and the Vortex Razor are way too common? Do you agree with these people that taking a variable optic with lower tier ammo is almost always better than taking a red dot with higher tier ammo? Well, let's talk about it. I want to take a quick second and thank Outplayed for sponsoring this video. Outplayed is a free program that allows you to record, organize, edit, and share your best gameplay moments. You can manually record clips, record entire sessions, or in certain games it actually can be automatically triggered by certain events like headshots or a kill. There are over 300 supported games. As you can see here, I just type in Escape from Tarkov and then there we go. And then I can set up the quality of the recording and the keybinds on how I want to set it up for me. Once you have your highlights, you can edit them all right there in the app and then share them with all your friends. I say all the time that one of the best ways to get better at Escape from Tarkov is to record, watch back, and learn from your own gameplay, and that couldn't be easier with Outplayed. So thank you so much again to Outplayed for sponsoring this video. A core part of the Escape from Tarkov experience is that at any time from just about anywhere, you can get shot even just once and die. That's part of what makes this game so stressful and brutal, and it is also part of what makes the game so rewarding when you play it right and do survive, especially if you take some people out along the way. However, if we take this all the way to the extreme where everybody always dies by only one bullet, well, then maybe from a gameplay perspective, that might be not as good. In addition to that maybe not being as fun, it also doesn't really allow the player to learn from their engagements or show off their skill by being able to turn around a fight and win even if they got caught off guard. Now, I'm not saying Tarkov is here, it's definitely not, and it's up to you to decide where it is on that spectrum and what you personally like. But when we look at a lot of what BSG shows us they want the game to be like in all of their trailers for patches or new maps, there are almost always long drawn out fights with suppressing fire, people getting hit and then having to heal and retreat. And I personally have been feeling more and more that that hasn't really been my experience. If we compare Tarkov to something like an MMO, we get an interesting picture. In an MMO, your whole gear set is important, and it could take days or even weeks to grind out a single piece of that set that you're going to use for a really long time. In Tarkov, we know that when we die, we lose all of our gear, and so that means that guns and ammo are king. I swear, every single time I wear a Slick, one of the best armors in the game, I get 2 taps to my stomach by a shotgun or a scav, or if I have an Alton on, I will inevitably get leg meted. The gear is great and it can protect you, but it provides no guarantees because there is almost always a way to bypass it completely. So the best thing you can do is bring a good gun and great ammo. But how big of a role do the attachments and specifically the optics play? Now, let me ask you this. If you had an SR25, would you take a Voodoo with M80 ammo or a Red Dot with M61? I asked the people on YouTube and Twitter, and the results were pretty staggering that most people would choose the Voodoo and the lower tier ammo. And while of course this does not apply to every situation and every single gun, it definitely shows how hugely important your optic choice is, potentially even over the ammo. And the thing about the current Tarkov that we have is that you almost never have to choose, and you can almost always have the best optic and the best ammo, which is once again a recipe for more one-taps. The more I thought about it, the more I started thinking that something is off with the balance of how available and powerful these optics are. So I started thinking about how changing a few things about these low-powered variable optics, or LPVOs, could have huge implications to combat in Tarkov. Now, hear me clearly. I want you to be able to one-tap me in this game. I like that, but the questions are, does it happen too often and is it too easy? Is it a more fun experience to have one-taps be rare and something that we're scared of that adds tension and stress to our raids? Or is it more fun to randomly fall over dead in like half of our raids with nothing to learn or gain from that experience? And the question I want to ask is, does that have anything to do with how powerful and how available these LPVOs are? If you have used one recently, you probably understand how powerful they are. Optics like the Voodoo and the Razor have pretty much no downside. They're effective from 0 to 300 meters, they have amazing sight pictures, you can instantly swap between modes, and you can even put a red dot on top if you want. If we take our MMO analogy a little bit further, these are like exotic level gems or augments. They don't do anything by themselves, but they are the best in-slot addition to your weapon. Put it on a shotgun, it won't do you much good, but put it on an SR25, and now we're in business. So they're powerful, but how available are they? As far as availability, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. You can purchase both the Voodoo and the Razor from Jaeger level 3, although the Voodoo is locked behind a quest. The Voodoo is 46,000 rubles, and you can buy 3 per reset, and they hover around 70k on the flea. The Razor is about 75,000 rubles, you can buy 2 per reset, and they also hover around 70 to 80k from the flea. Now, as a quick side note, there are tons of other optics in the game. Optics like the Valde and the TAC-30 are also variable zoom optics, and there are tons of other fixed zoom optics like the Hammer, the Bravo, and the ACOGs. The thing is that even compared to the variable zoom ones like the Valde, these two are just better. They have clearer sight pictures, less scope shadow, all sorts of stuff like that. And then the non-variable optics simply have too many downsides comparatively. If you have a hammer with a delta point on top, swapping between them is actually some sort of animation, which might mean you lose your target while you're tracking them. Same thing with a canted sight. Swapping between a Bravo or an ACOG to a canted sight takes a little bit of time. There's an animation and you might lose your target. Now, some of these optics are great and I know some people like to use them, but by and large, at the end of the day, an optic with any downside won't get used next to an optic with no downsides. Now, going back to availability, the fact that you can purchase these on the flea market and purchase 5 of them per reset means that functionally they have unlimited availability. The best attachment in the game whenever you want, the exotic gem in infinite supply. Or if you're a new player without Jaeger level 3 or 70,000 rubles to spend on an optic every time you build a gun, they probably seem the opposite, not unlimited, but completely out of reach. And we'll touch on this again in a minute. Now, some people like to throw realism at me here because in real life, these optics kind of are the best and they are the most used. However, there is another side to that realism coin that we're going to touch on in a bit, and that is that you can't instantly swap between zoom levels while keeping both of your hands on your gun and tracking a target. But we'll get to that more in a minute. For now, I think we've established that they are powerful and they are very available to some. So what do we do about it? A lot of people at this point will say, well, increase the price. I personally don't think that price works. If they were 100,000 rubles per optic, people would still buy them because of how much value they provide and how relatively easy money is to get if you've been playing the game for a while. Increasing the price would make it much harder for the people who already struggle to get them to compete with the people that use them every single raid. So how would I fix it? Well, in my opinion, it's in 2 parts. Part 1 would be to add an animation to switching the zoom levels. I don't think they should actually go in and animate every single optic on every single gun with every single mount, but we can use the animation for when you take an optic off a gun in raid. If you have a gun in your hands and you take an attachment off of it, the gun goes below your vision and then immediately comes back up without that attachment. We can use that animation for when you're swapping zoom levels and maybe even speed it up a little bit so it's not super slow. I just think that there should be something. This would also potentially allow us to buff these optics alongside nerfing them by allowing us to pick what zoom level. Imagine using a voodoo and being able to choose between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6x levels of magnification. In my opinion, this would put them in a really good spot. It would finally give them a disadvantage so that they're not just super powerful. They would still have utility and benefits over something like a hammer or an ACOG because you can choose the zoom levels. But then finally, optics like the hammer and the ACOG would also finally have a benefit over the LPVOs because putting a delta point on top or a cannon sight would be quicker and you'd be able to keep your gun up as opposed to switching the zoom level. I have a feeling that at first people would really hate this, but I think if you really sit and think about it, it would be hard to defend why these LPVOs should stay the way that they are right now. It would be much more realistic as well, and while realism is definitely not a definitive reason why something should be added to the game, in my opinion, this is something that seems like it works for both. Other games like Insurgency Sandstorm already handle their LPVOs this way. This alone would do so much in combat. Think about how much it would affect fights. It would be a lot harder to just run around labs or close quarters maps just wrecking people because you can instantly swap and look down super long angles and then turn around and fight somebody super close. Imagine you walk up on somebody that just swapped to 6x. You might have the advantage for surprising them and they have to rely on point fire or a laser as opposed to just instantly swapping back to 1x and turning around on you. Now, this all affects how powerful they are, and now we tackle their availability. The other half of this is that I would like to try and make them, and potentially a lot of the other optics as well, like the hammer and the ACOGs and the Bravos, found in raid only and not sellable on the flea market. So you couldn't purchase them on the flea and you couldn't purchase them from the traders. And then we would bump the spawns and balance it out from there. The goal here is to reduce the instant and unlimited access every single raid without making it disproportionately hard for the casual players to get a hold of them. Let us consider another MMO example and think about it this way. Let's take a normal MMO level scheme for gear: common, uncommon, rare, legendary, and exotic. Right now, if you are a low level, these scopes seem like they are legendary difficulty. They're really, really hard to come by, but not impossible. But if you're a high level with money or level 3 unlocked, these immediately go all the way down to common. They become an incredibly common item because you have infinite access to them whenever you want. The question is, do we think they belong at either ends of this spectrum? Do we think that to the vast majority of players, one of the best attachments in the game should be a common item? If we remove them from the flea market and the traders, but maybe bump the spawn rates of them slightly, they move to a rare status for everyone. So if you're low levels, these actually might become slightly more available because you can actually find them in raid. And if you're a high level, they aren't in unlimited supply. This feels more like an actual gameplay loop to me. Want the good stuff? You got to play the game to get it and not just buy it whenever you want it. And if we rope in most of the optics into this and not just the LPVOs, you couldn't really farm voodoos because you could loot crates and loot attachment shacks, but at the end of the day, you might find any scope. If you only have one more voodoo in your stash and you found a hammer, well, you might actually use the hammer. Now, of course, the people that play more will have more than you, but they will have to play to get it. I still want the game to be rewarding the more time you put in. If you play 5 times more than me, you should have more gear and more money than me, but at least I'll know you didn't just buy it all, you had to play the game to get it. All of this together would hopefully mean that there's more balance between the scopes in the game, there's more variety in scopes used, and scopes wouldn't be the norm in every single endgame PvP fight, which would hopefully mean that more fights lasted longer and there were less random one-taps, but there was still the ability to do that when you find these really cool and rare scopes. Anyways, those are just my thoughts. I am definitely no game developer, and balance in a game as complicated as this is probably something that is near impossible, and I definitely don't think that I could do it on my own. Let me know what you think. Did I miss something? Are there other ideas that could maybe play into this? This was definitely more of a thought experiment than a call for the devs to do something very specific, but I just wanted to kind of get all this out and see how other people felt about it. If you like this video, think about dropping a like, commenting down below, or subscribing to the channel for more content like this. I stream Escape from Tarkov on Twitch about 6 days a week. All my links will be down below. I'd love to have you stop by and say hey. And if you're looking for people to play Tarkov with, our Discord server is an awesome place to be. That link is down below as well. Thank you again for stopping by, and I will definitely see y'all on the next one.